Good morning, Hemshech Ayin Beis, volume 3, at the bottom of page 1462. Let's review it, and then we'll do the parentheses that I had skipped yesterday. So we're talking about the tremendous thirst, longing, yearning, developed by a soul down here below, facing the darkness of this world, or in the words that he used, Shcheirani, I am dark. So, on one hand, it's a darkness that is unprecedented in the higher worlds, because there's no darkness, there's divine revelation. On the other hand, this darkness itself triggers and is what draws out the deepest strengths of the soul, as he began discussing, if you want to know where this topic began, because he's going back to that beginning, back on page 1455. We're now in 1462. So 7 pages back. So it brings out these deepest faculties of the soul. That's the words he used on page 1455. Okay. Now he's using the language that's more the deep thirst that reaches all the way to Atzmos. Because what happens here is the soul also comes to the awareness that even the higher revelations, even though initially they're obviously revelations, but compared to Atzmos, which the Yesh below discovers, they're all considered lifeless, all those levels, as we've been learning as well through the last few pages here. And as a result, it develops this tremendous thirst. So la'ased love, this thirst will be quenched, and we'll have the actual experience of we'll have the actual experience of ayin ba'ayin yirov v'nigla kved Hashem v'ro kol basar, that we will see the divine in the fullest sense of the word. Just 1 second, everybody. Okay, sorry about that. And that's Simoin, okay. And that Simoin he associated also with the concept of Chelas Ava, love sickness, as explained in the Maimorim of Ahoy Midah Chedesh B'Chadoshe that he quotes, cites on top of the page in the Siddur Shar Chedesh on the Likutei Torah. So it's all about yearning and longing, and that reaches, what level does that reach? That reaches the level all the way of Atzmus Ein Sof, or as it is in context of the spheres, Pnimius Atik. And that explains the Shemesh B'Shabbos is Dokel La'anim, that due to the hunger, the thirst that develops in the weekdays, the Yemei Achel develops a Chelas Ava and a Semayin, a thirst, that in turn is quenched. That thirst is quenched through Shabbos, where the sunshine of Shabbos is a Dokel La'anim. So Shabbos is the level of Karosel Shabbos Einig, Pnimius Einig, especially in the third meal. And tzedakah is also associated with that level. Tzedakah is the level hachamishis lepare, the 5th level, that's higher than the 4 hands, the 4 arms, that are the 4 worlds or the 4 letters of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And higher than that is the level of chamishis, which connects with Atik. That's higher than all of that. So that's the connection between Shemesh of Shabbos and tzedakah, and it's all to the Anim, which are the impoverished ones, the ones that are thirsty, essentially. And that explains b'midbar asher isa, that statement that in the midbar that you've seen, through the midbar we come. And also and that's what to just go back to, and that's what the neshama says below. The neshama below says to the neshama as it is above. Shcheirani. It says to the Bnei Yerushalayim, the souls the B'nai, the daughters of Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim as they are in Atzilus. Shcheirani, but through that I became Venova, beautiful. I came to an Ava Rabba and Ava B'tainugim, Umidbarche Nova, Umidabrech Nova, Ubamidbar Asher Isa. And that's why Ariyah, when they talk about the three levels of he talked before the moonlight, and there's luminous stone, and Ariyah, the vision or eyesight, is associated with Malchus of Asiya, because you reach the level of Atzmus and Neshama, Avirab of Tainugim, and Riyah and Atzmus, which is higher than the Riyah of the souls above, that's where you reach that highest of levels. So let me just clarify one point. I said I would look up the source where he spoke about the Daled Yodes. So he said the four Yodes are the four worlds. And then he said, V'hein Daled Yodes shabakol echad tnein dereyin hainu b'chinas tchar v'nukva. So that line, I said I would look that up to know what that means. So that comes from a Zohar in Truma. The Zohar is, I believe, page 166b, Daf Kuf Samach Vav Ayin Beis, Zohar Chelik Beis, the second volume, where he talks like this. He speaks about that Ner, the word Ner is 250. Ner is 250. And he explains how do you get to the word Ner? Ner Hashem Nishma Sodom. We say Ner Mitzvah V'Torah, which actually is going to be the subject matter that he's going to go and address in the next page. I think that's one of the reasons he may bring that here. So Ner 250 is made up of 248 the 248 limbs, Ramach Evarim plus 2. What are the two? So the Ramach connect to the world of Zoh, the Zohar, Zoh of Atzilus. Malchus, the two arms of the feminine Malchus, plus the 200, which embrace Zoh, is what adds up 248 plus 2, that's 250. So based on that, the Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah Shlach, and I'll give you the source right here. Let's see here. Likutei Shlach, Mem Hey Dalet, 45, the D, he discusses this Zohar. So the Zohar says, there, to be more explicit, that there's two arms. There's the two arms of the male, there's the two arms of the female. So when they embrace each other, you have four arms. That's the Daled Yodes. Two Zachar and two Nekeva. That's what he meant. So yesterday I was guessing what it means, but this is the accurate. The Daled Yodes, Shebekol Echad. Shebekol Echad means in each male and female, there's Terein Dereyin, the two arms, the Hainu, B'chinas Tchar v'Nukva. And Likutei Torah he explains it. I just gave the chapter, the page in Shlach, where he explains it a little more in detail, that idea. So regardless, the four, however, are still the structure of Shtalshlus. It's Zon Malchus, Char v'Nukva. Number 5, the Chamishis Lepare, that already refers to a fifth level, which is the level of, like he said, of Tainug or Primius Atik. Atik, that's the level of Chamishis Hanal, where he says, let's see here, Chamisha Gili Ein Sov, the stimid they call stimin, the concealed of all the concealments, the cover of all covers, Shalamayla Man B'chinas Atzilus, the level of Atik Antu Chad. There's no structure of two, of Char Nukva, male and female. There's no structure of four worlds, 4 letters, or 4 arms for that matter. There, it's the level 5. It's a unifying force, a singular force, which refers to Atik, that's higher than this structure. And that's what Tzedakah reaches. And how do we get there? We get there through the Chelas Ava and the Tzemoyin, the thirst and the love sickness from the lack that we feel deprived in the lowest of worlds. And that leads back to the rest of what we just discussed, all the way to the end of the page. The entire theme of the big section here, going back all the way to, I pointed out the pages, all the way to where we began discussing this section. Hariyah was on page 1454, and now we concluded that whole piece, but we have now still to do the parentheses. So let me now go to the parentheses, unless somebody has a question about what I said till now here. Okay. Okay,
It's
good.
not a question, but it's just a comment. It occurred to me like the fifth level is the fifth level that we reach on Yom Kippur. Like, is that related at all to the 1/5, the tzedakah, or is that not? Am I just off the?
Oh, that's what he said. Yeah, tzedakah is given. He said, "Mitzvah tzedakah b'cheimish." The reason we give a fifth because the fifth represents this fifth level. Yeah. In other words, 40. If a fifth, 4/5 are the forearms that belong to you. The tzedakah you give as your obligation is reaching a level that's beyond the 4 that belongs to you.
I get it. Thank
So
you.
if a person has, let's say, $100, so 80 is the 4 times 20, and then the last 20 is the fifth, which goes to tzedakah, which touches a deeper level when you give tzedakah. Okay?
Does that mean you have to give a fifth to get this? I mean, if somebody gives 10, 15% tzedakah, I mean, they get the benefit of giving tzedakah, or you have to give a fifth, or is it any tzedakah?
That you could ask a question in halacha. The halacha says that a person should give meiser, which is a tenth, or a fifth. If they're going mahader, that you should ask him mashpia or your rav. This has nothing to do with this discussion here. Whatever halachically you have to be doing, you want to do, that's what it is. But chamishis is the level. When it says you should give a fifth, that's the reason. The fifth is connected. Whether you get this hamshacha, if you give less than a fifth, I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Also in Chayenu,
does a person get this level if he doesn't give tzedakah? You know? It's like anything. If you don't do the mitzvah to the fullest, you probably get something. I don't know if you get the fullest level of it.
I was just going to say that in Chayenu that they've been doing the mimer of the Alter Rebbe specifically dealing with tzedakah. And
okay, so
obviously you can. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do now the parentheses. The parentheses that begins on the line Me'ein Hagili de La'asid, where he speaks that Midbar Shari Isa, that through the Midbar and Semayin, through the desert, through the wilderness and the thirst, you come to a level of vision or clarity, Riyah. Me'ein Hagili de La'asid. That's similar to the Gili of La'asid. Remember, we said Shabbos is Me'ein de La'asid. So why is it Me'ein? Because La'asid is obviously a full-blown version, a permanent experience, whereas today we have a taste of it, or a similar dimension in the microcosmic level. So the parenthesis goes like this. Ubchinas Riyah, what is the level of Riyah? He's going to be addressing, before we read inside, let me explain. Is Riyah a form of Rotzo or is it a form of Shuv? Because you could argue both ways. When you see something, so remember we said when you see it, you yearn for it. The more you're aware of it, the more you perceive it, the deeper your thirst. Like I mentioned, the child looking through a window of a candy shop, the more he sees the candies, the more you want it, the more you desire it. That's just a very mundane example. On a deeper level, the more you contemplate on the beauty and on the superiority and the value we spoke about, the true life of godliness in its highest levels, the more you long for it, the more you feel the lack. So that would sound like that Riyah is a form of a Rotzo. It's more like showing you what you're lacking. So Rotzo creates the thirst. But Riyah, we also know sometimes associated with Shuv, integration, that when you see something, that actually satisfies you. So he's going to now address Riyah in context of Rotzo and Shuv. Now you may recall on page, what page was it? Yeah, I believe it was on, just a second, where he said, my shoes bar. Yeah. On page 1459, he spoke about Yeah, 1459, he spoke about that when the nefesh is in a state of a midbar, deep thirst and intense yearning, it's not matzmiach. It doesn't create things to grow because it's not a state of gilui. It's a state of thirst. But then he said, nasa hashuv. Nevertheless, this creates afterwards a shuv. This thirst will then create that we want to draw down. Like we're learning here, that after the thirst of the weekdays, when we feel the lack, so what happens on Shabbos? Shabbos is shemesh b'Shabbos dakal aniyim. We have the sunshine, the Gilui Elokus, the divine revelation on Shabbos that quenches the thirst. So it's a level of a shuv. That's like also, so Riyah has both aspects. That's what he's going to address now in the parentheses. So let's read it inside, and then Ub'chinas Riyah, he b'chinas Rotzo, oi b'chinas shuv. Riyah can be understood either like the level of Rotzo, seeing something, creating a yearning for it, oi b'chinas shuv, or it could be something that is in a sense like resolving, and not creating the yearning, but actually resolving that yearning by satisfying the person. Ki al yedei Riyah, why is that the case? Because through Riyah, when a person sees something, or they come to a state of such clarity as if they see it, it's like he said before, it's like kamoy Riyah mamish, something you're contemplating on, even though your eyes don't see it, but your heart and your mind experiences it in a very resonating, in a very clear way. So that type of Riyah creates a very powerful love of delights, of pleasures. In Torah the Alter Rebbe explains this idea that Riyah leads to a state of Ava b'tainugim. So let me explain. When you hear about something, let's say someone tells you about a beautiful painting they saw, or they traveled somewhere and they saw beautiful natural sights. So they can explain it to you with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement and passion. Obviously, you're not going to have quite the passion they have because you didn't see it. It may cause that you'd like to go see it, so it could stimulate interest, but to say that you're going to have the same type of passion by hearing something as seeing it, no. When you see it with your own eyes, there's something about sight that takes a hold of us, that mesmerizes us, that captivates us, that allows you to really feel an experience, emotional experience of what he's calling here Ava b'tainugim. Obviously, just an example. The same with godliness. We can read and learn about God. We could understand it philosophically. We could learn deeper, understand it in very profound ways, but it doesn't necessarily elicit an emotion. It could be pure philosophy. You can learn about before the tzimtzum and after the tzimtzum and all the levels in a very mechanical way, where you come away understanding each detail and each piece, each component, but you don't necessarily have an emotional reaction. Or you may have one that's more of an excitement, like we learned, emotional, intellectual excitement. Your mind gets excited, just like a physicist may get excited by an idea. But then there's another level we call Riyah. Riyah is when you really begin to contemplate that God is the essence of your life. Not just that God is a very powerful entity, an unbelievable architect, an unbelievable designer and engineer, or even beyond all that, an unbelievable artist or greater than an artist, but that he's your life, chayecha. It's personal. That this is the essence of who you are. If you remember earlier up on this page, he said, when he says, hasaga gemura, that what? That by contemplating deeply on existence, you come to hasaga gemura ki'ilu roya mamish. It's as if you see it. So you don't see the ayin eliki, the divine ayin, the divine energy within existence, but you come to a point of perception that it's like almost you see it. And not just a story that you heard or you read somewhere. And that in turn can create and does create a very deep level, a great thirst, or what he calls here ava b'tainugim. So that is idea in Asmachinas Abedin Kamishkosa, but that's what he says in Torah as well. Who b'chinas Rotzo? This is in a state of yearning, of longing, a state of tension, actually. Rotze, you're yearning, you're longing for it. Shekola keches, that all the faculties of the person, v'chola atzmus, and his entire being, his entire core essence, nimshachim v'nidbokim b'chinas atzmus, are drawn to and are being attached and cleaving to atzmus. So to use an example from parents and children, maybe, or from spouses, you can love your spouse, you can love your children, but it's in a more, let's call it a more passive way. That doesn't mean there isn't a deep love. But then there are times, either maybe because you miss them, they may be traveling, or because you're suddenly appreciating them because you think that maybe you're not going to be here forever. I don't know. I don't want to use any negative examples, but something stimulates, something ignites the profound love you have. And suddenly it's not the same like on a daily basis where you feel a general love to your family, but you really feel a deep passion. You may even want to see them. You really want to connect with them. So you could see from there are different levels of awareness. You could have awareness of things that you enjoy or things that you love and the things you like that you want in your life, but it doesn't necessarily always on a fiery, passionate level. But then there's a point where he says it's a level of riyah that you come to, a rotze, that he says that all the faculties and his whole entire atzmus, kol atzmus, meaning his whole being, is nimshachim v'nidbokim, is drawn. Basically, you're obsessed with it. You're consumed with it. B'bchinas ha'atzmus. So this is a level of riyah connected to rotze. V'hu inyan uboisid bakum. And that's what it says in the pasuk. And you shall uboy, in him you shall be dveikus, from the word dovuk, to attach yourself. You shall attach yourself to him. Dveikus is much more than just iskashus. Attachment means completely binding yourself with what it is. Dveikus etzem be'etzem. That your etzem and the etzem of Elikus are being attaching with each other. Like two flames come together and they become literally like one. So this is like the height of a person's passion in connecting and attaching with godliness. So etzem dveikus etzem be'etzem. Like it discusses elsewhere. So you see here clearly he's going deeper into the whole idea of the rotze and the riyah. Okay. That is the rotze part of riyah, of eyesight. And remember the theme overall in the big part of this third volume is riyah. So explaining how riyah creates this tremendous amount. That's why you see this. Sometimes when you see your loved one, it's very different than when you don't see them. You suddenly see someone, let's say someone you deeply love and you haven't seen them for a while. And then you see them from a distance, they're coming off a plane, or you meet them somewhere. There's something that the vision that you can't even anticipate, because when you see them, it creates that deep connection and arouses you in much deeper ways than just knowing that you're going to be seeing them. So that's the level of riyah and elikus. Now comes this, let me stop here if anybody wants to ask anything. And then he's going to talk about the shuv part of riyah.
Like Shabbos Chazon. When you see the Beis
Shabbos
Hamikdash.
Chazon was shown the Beis Hamikdash from a distance in order to ignite our yearning to have the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Yeah. Okay. V'gam, now comes the second part. V'gam hariyah hi b'bchinas shuv. Riyah is also in the second state of shuv. Shuv is integration. If Rotze is yearning for something, you see it and you yearn for it, shuv is the process of internalizing it, integrating. So tension and resolution, if you wish, Rotze and shuv. Yearning and settling in. Like shuv, from the word shuv, return. So he says, you have riyah also b'chinas shuv. It's not just that all your faculties and all of you is yearning to go to a higher place. Here is the other way around, that the Oyer Vagili, this light and revelation should radiate b'chol hakeches in all the faculties of the person. How? Ayidei Torah and Mitzvos. Torah and Mitzvos is the process. When a person has deep longing and yearning, we know next step is that it should bring to action. It should come down now into Torah and Mitzvos, which is often compared to the quenching of the thirst, because it grounds it. It concretizes it. Shehem b'chinas atzmus ein sof. The Torah and Mitzvos are also coming from atzmus ein sof. I think that's what he means here. So that now is Torah and Mitzvos, is learning Torah. If you take that passion, that fiery yearning, and you turn it into a learning Torah, doing a mitzvah, that's bringing it down to shuv. V'hainu, and this means the masha Soma nafshe lachzes b'neim Hashem, that his soul thirsted to gaze. Lachze is another word for riyah, to gaze b'neim Hashem, to the delights, to the sweetness of godliness. B'chinas atzmus ein sof. That very thirst, marvit simene, he quenches that thirst. That thirst is satisfied b'teira mitzvah shem b'chinas atzmus. Yeah, through teira mitzvahs, because that alone is atzmus. In other words, atzmus is not just yearning to reach a level that's beyond us. Atzmus gave us tools and instruments that are divine. The Torah mitzvahs is also part of atzmus. That's what atzmus wants, which is not like the world. That's why we say that Torah is not like the physical world or even the spiritual world. Torah mitzvah satisfies that thirst, because when you're learning Torah and you're doing a mitzvah, you're doing a Torah mitzvah of Hashem. So in a sense, it's like you yearn for it and now internalize it through Torah mitzvahs. V'tia simchas nafshe gdela la'lekim. And this person then, simchas nafshe, the simcha, the joy of his spirit, of his soul, will be nafshe gdela, will be gdela simcha. V'tia simchas nafshe gdela la'lekim. It'll be a great joy to godliness, to God. Lisaneg al Hashem, to enjoy God, Hashem, ba'ava b'tainugim, with an ava b'tainugim. So before he said ava b'tainugim, he used that in the context of ava as yearning for it. Now he's talking about ava b'tainugim as in internalizing it. B'chinas tainug the er yashar, a tainug that's er yashar, which is the energy that flows down. There's a tainug of er chayzer that's like Rotzo. A tainug that you're meglust, you yearn, you long for something, and then there's a tainug of er yashar where it's settling in. When we say Shabbos, for example, karos la Shabbos einig, it's a shuv. It's after the 6 days of the week when we're yearning. Then Shabbos shuv. Now you settle in, you come sit at the table, you have a meal. It's an einig that's einig of er yashar. Mipnei kirvas Hashem, due to his closeness to Hashem, with veikusa belikim chayim, and his attachment to the living God. Tachas, asher hoiset sama mosai ovay ve'era. So, because that, or in place of, or in response to, the thirst that we said, when will I arrive and see godliness? So v'hirvitz nafshe b'chinas gilei zeh haniten b'matan teira. So hirva means he comes and quenches his nefesh. This gili that was given at matan teira, shekavyochel nimcharti ima vizbia nefesh ekaka. She's bringing many different expressions, all very concentrated here in a very few lines. So nimchara ima shekavyochel, nimchara means, from the word he says nimchara, means bound, completely invested and bound with us. Which says vayichuli oisi atim leichin is an expression that you'll take me because you're actually getting my very etzem. In other words, by Matan Torah, Hashem didn't give them a revelation; He gave them His very etzem as it's invested in Torah. Like we say, "Anon nafshi ksovis Yehovah by anochi." I have inscribed myself in these words, in these letters, in this writing. So you're getting nimcharti kavyoch nimcharti ima. Like I've been sold to you, you own me. But it also means you're bound with me. He's bia nefesh ekaka. And he's sated, he's bia from the word v'savota, sated, satisfied, a yearning soul. So by Matan Torah, they saw this tremendous giluyim. They definitely seek that out. That's why Parcha Nishmasam, on every word, their souls expired out of this great longing, but then God revived them, and it was the Torah that quenched their profound thirst. So you see here that the Riyah has two sides to it. One side is that it brings us to a deep longing, but there's another side where Riyah brings down the pleasure and internalizes it in the level of Shuv. So when you see something, both things can happen. The seeing can create that you want it, you want more of it, especially if you don't have it completely. But the seeing is also a form of satisfaction, because the very fact that you can see it, and it's not just a story that you hear from a distance, is also leads to, like he says here, to a level of Shuv. Obviously, we'd like to have both levels in Riyah, Rotzo and Shuv. So he doesn't say more on this topic, which obviously can require some more explanation, what exactly he's talking about here, and why is he bringing this in the first place. But I think going back to that page I referred to, page 1459, where he says, Bezen Nasa Shuv, I think can help us understand that the great thirst that comes from a soul down below is not meant to remain in a state of thirst. It's meant to be satisfied and to be quenched. So it's quenched on Shabbos, and La'asad love will be the full quenching when the soul will be sated with all these highest revelations. So I think he's just really addressing it now in more detail with the Rotzo and Shuv. But I think that's okay. That's the parentheses, and then from there he continues, and this is what the soul says when it comes down below, that I am dark but beautiful, because this thirst is both a thirst that also brings me to Avarabba v'avet v'tainugim. I also would add that when you love something, it's not a one black and white picture where you love it, you gain it, and then you move on. Love is an ongoing journey. There's a constant Rotzo v'shuv in love itself. When you love someone deeply, you love them now, so there's a yearning to reach deeper in the connection. Then that's satisfied, so then you want to reach even deeper, and it's a forever journey. It doesn't stop. So it's not like physical thirst. You know, you were thirsty, you drank, and you're satisfied. Here, it's a constant thirst that leads to being satisfied, and then further, deeper thirst as you climb and reach deeper levels of experiencing the divine. I think that also helps understand some of what we just learned. Okay. Any questions on this? Because with this, then he concludes, it finishes the page, and we already learned till the bottom of the page. Any questions, my friends? Anybody?
Yes.
Now I understand.
Once the soul comes down to this world and is shchorani, and then comes to realize that Elohim of the spiritual worlds is ve'ein aroch compared to Atzmus, and experience that dafka through the darkness of Olam Hazeh Gashmi. Once that neshama, after 120 years, goes back to Gan Eden, does it realize that in Gan Eden, does it remember the Atzmus that it experienced in Olam Hazeh, which would cause a longing to come back down and be here to experience that longing? Or does it only go back up to only experiencing
I think the neshama is forever changed. Once the neshama comes down below, it's never going to be the same. Either way, whether experienced a full longing or not. So neshama is always going to be changed by the new awareness. It actually, it could have an element that you said, that it longs to come back down to finish, to do more Torah and Mitzvos. It also longs for Mashiach and Geula now in a new way. You know, neshama, before it came down below, you could say it's very happy. It's living in the king's palace. It has all the delights. It's serving God. It's loving and revering the divine. Atzilus is a very, very pleasant place to be. There's no worries. There's no parnasa issues. There's no health. There's no nothing. I mean, no one's knocking at your door for anything. It's just pure divine delight. But however, Yofish Shah Achaz B'tshuva Ma'asim Tovim B'Elam Hazeh Mikol Chai Elam Hab. 1 hour down below with the challenges and the difficulties opens up the eyes of the neshama. And I mean eyes literally based on what we're learning here, Riyah, that the neshama suddenly sees things it never saw before, both on the dark level, but also on levels that are far beyond any revelation that it would ever have. So neshama for always will retain that new state of consciousness. I can't speak because I don't remember what it was like in Gan Eden, and I haven't spoken to anyone from there recently, so I can't tell you exactly how they feel. But there's no question that they've been changed, and that's why I think the Neshamas Lamayla are anticipating and want the Geula more than ever, because they saw both worlds. They saw the revelations. They saw what happens down below, and they want to have that which they have, the best of both. That Atzmus should be revealed down below exactly as it's revealed above, but it should be Atzmus, not just Giluyim. So that's how I would understand that the Neshamas for sure want that. And it's also alluded to many places. The Rebbe would say it also often, that for sure Neshamas, as they go up Lamaila, the Rabbeim are praying for us, and they want the end of Golus too. Even though they may not be experiencing the shchira, the darkness, as they did when a soul is inside of a body, but to say that they're completely oblivious, not really, even though there are discussions on this. The Gemara talks about, does the neshama see the pain of this world? But still, you can't say that all the Torah and Mitzvos done below does not have an impact. You have to say it has an impact.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Rabbi. One is, are we in the ultimate future the soul from above and I guess if you're not here when it happens, it'll be one soul, but are we going to be united with that one up? Is it all going to be one? That soul that here we are talking to our counterpart above.
Well,
that's
let's put it this
all
way.
be one.
Since it's just keep in mind, it's not physical above and below. It's two states of consciousness. So
No,
yes,
I know.
to put it in that terms, their higher consciousness above, or what we call B'nai Yerushalayim, will be joined with the consciousness below. And as a matter of fact, the below will add to the above, because there's awareness that we have that they don't have. So yes, they will join in a full union. The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Not only
And
that,
the other
if you
question.
remember-
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. And not only that, if you remember, it actually says that the neshama below will elevate all the levels above to that state. And that's the process. That's what's happening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The other question I had was, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. Did you say that Elokus is also experiencing that pleasure, or did I not hear that correctly when we have that connection on that deepest level?
I didn't say that. I didn't say anything.
Okay. Thank you.
That unity that you just mentioned about B'nai Yerushalayim and the Neshama Lamata, that also occurs every Shabbos?
To some extent, there is a joining. Look, Shabbos is an elevated state of consciousness and awareness, the way it's meant to be. Let's put it that way. So as soon as you have that, you're having a me'ain, he says, of la'asid. You have to say, therefore, that there's more gilui, like a me'ain of elam haba. So in some way, and some Maimorim talk about it, the neshamas above, like for example, it says Gehenim closes on Shabbos. So all the neshamas are no longer in the state of judgment or any of that. So all the neshamas are in an exalted state, and therefore you have to say there's some deeper connection to neshama below to neshama above. Look, every day we say neshama shenasata bi tahirihi ata barasa ata yitzata ata nefachta bi, and yet on a Shabbos the connection to the tahiri is a little deeper. On Yomim Tevim and Yom Kippur, when you say Yechida is shining on Yom Kippur, or in the Aser Simei Tshuva, we speak about Dirsha Hashem b'Himatzei Karua b'Yesei Karuv. You're talking about where the flame comes closer to the mother flame. The expression Kiruv HaMoyer El HaNitzutz, that as we go through Elul coming up, and then getting closer to Tishrei and Rosh Hashanah, the mother flame and the spark, which is each soul, in a way, the orbit, they get closer. As they get closer, they're drawn to each other. That's why we have the awakenings and the stirrings of tshuva during that time. So that's all the same idea. Every Shabbos has an element of it. Look, at the end of the day, it's about divine consciousness, spiritual consciousness. The days are the times in the year when that manifests. But at the end of the day, it's about states of consciousness, just depending on the time, depending on the space. Look, when you're standing in a shul, or by the Kosel, or in some holy place, you have also higher states because there are less filters, there are less layers that are blocking between the divine and us, less levushim. That's what happens on Shabbos. There are less garments, so therefore the channels are more open, less clogged. The channels are less clogged or less blocked, and so on. Okay. Good. I'm exhaling because now comes, he's going to go back now to all the way back to 1350, where he started talking about the interface Mamai Lamata Torah. So I feel there's like a shift here. He's going to come back to starting to conclude that, if you talk about a plane taking off, I feel the plane is starting to land. So this is now the beginnings of the end of Ayin Beis. Even though we've already gone through quite a few things that are, but the next page especially starts going back to the beginning of this section. I'll explain it more in the next class, but you'll see what I mean. So we've begun our descent. Okay, so we stop here, bottom of page 1462.